Now we're ready. Good evening, and welcome to the Rose O'Neill Literary House for what has very quickly become one of my favorite events of the year, the Kiplin Hall reading, where students who participated in the 2025 Kiplin Hall Summer Study Abroad program gather once again to share, as the packet introduction says, the epiphanies they experienced hiking in the Lake District Hills and Yorkshire moors, visiting castles and abbeys, and immersing themselves in museums, mills, and Kiplin Hall, an ancestral home of Maryland's Calvert family. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Roy Kesey, and if today I smell a little different, it's because I ran out of my regular shampoo and had to use somebody else's. It's called County Fair. If you're looking for a new signature scent with notes of corn dogs, cotton candy, and carny sweat. Anyway, I'm the associate director here at the Lit House and a creative writing professor in the English department, and it is my great good fortune to join the Kiplin Hall trip as the co-leader responsible for the travel writing side of things. Not all, but much of what you'll be hearing today was first written as part of the travel writing exercises that the group did each day, all of us scattered but within sight of each other, on hilltops and moor crests and castle walls, and once in the middle of a long hike along the dinosaur coast of North Yorkshire that I should have known better than to interrupt. We rode in the sunshine, we rode in the rain, and I am so proud of the work that the students produced. Before handing over the mic, on behalf of the Lit House, I want to thank our colleagues in crime from STAR and CES and the English department who helped us build out the current iteration of the program, as well as my own colleagues here at the Lit House, Director James Allen Hall, Assistant Director Amber Talianicic, and student interns Sarah Beth Metzger, who's helping with tech tonight, and Faye Dorman, who designed the reading packet that I hope you're all holding, with a special shout out to Shannon Weibel in Central Services for a low lead time print job. Please turn your cell phones off if you haven't already. And without further ado, please help me welcome the director of the Kiplin Hall Summer Study Abroad program, the English department's own Dr. Katie Charles.
Trickiest thing about following Roy is the mic adjustments, I think. I think this room is booming with a sort of transcendental electricity that feels really appropriate to this event, which celebrates the full relaunch of our beloved Kiplin Hall program. It's a long anticipated delight to be here with you tonight. There is a saying, perhaps apocryphal, but most famously attributed to the Greek philosopher Heraclitus, "No man steps in the same river twice." Tonight, I will borrow it to pose a somewhat analogous question. Can a beloved study abroad program hike the same mountains twice? Or, at least, how can it carry forward a set of core experiences, intellectual, emotional, and embodied, after the retirement of its charismatic founders? What tonight's reading seeks is to share an update from that work in progress, and perhaps even more importantly, a celebration of the successful relaunch of Washington College's beloved Kiplin Hall program. It is a Lake District hiking trip largely constructed around the Wordsworth siblings, both William, the poet, and Dorothy, the avid life writer and naturalist, a redoubtable duo who built a rich literary culture around their habit of walking up to 20 miles a day across the fells or mountains in the local Cumbrian dialect. The Wordsworth's example turned the Lake District into one of England's first literary pilgrimage spots, and the fell hikes that follow in their footsteps to Greenhead Gill, Cat Bells, Stickletarn, and my favorite, Pico Stickle. These Lake District hikes encapsulate the muddy boots pedagogy at the heart of this program. Today you'll be hearing some 12 voices sharing accounts of the wonder, questions, and individual transformations that students and instructors carried home after 10 days of immersion in the north of England. All of them will speak to different ways of processing the information gleaned from this place-based pedagogy. Their remarks include accounts of a significant encounter an intellectual epiphany tied to their encounter with a place, be it a moor, a museum, a mountainside, an archive, a historic home, or an unfamiliar object, as well as the creative writing sparked by these encounters, and even a poem inspired by a packet of Tesco raspberries. These specific instances offer evidence and a roadmap for the kinds of interdisciplinary thinking and experiences that we are designing our now annual trips to elicit. But before passing the microphone, I will take just a few minutes to outline a bit of the history of our program, which I have described as beloved, but is also idiosyncratic, in a way that I hope piques interest as flags for the sort of jubilant eccentricity that tends to convert enthusiasts into scholars of the Romantic period. And I think also gives a sense of the spark that characterizes the true liberal arts education. First, here's a basic outline of core facts. From 1998 to 2016, over 200 Washington College students immersed themselves in a full-body, all-weather exploration of hiking the poetic landscape that inspired the Wordsworths, the Brontes, and even Beatrix Potter. Under the visionary leadership of English professors Rich and Barbara Gillen, and the stout backing of former board chair and interim president Jay Griswold, what everyone refers to as Kiplin Hall became something of an icon for the college, a rite of passage, and the embodiment of our high-touch variant of the liberal arts. And I'm speaking to a room that's mostly familiar with this distinctive liberal arts education, but part of the unofficial motto for Washington College over the past decades has become, have unhurried conversations. When Rich Gillen published his retrospective book account of the trip with Common Ground in November of 2020, he entitled it simply, A Guide to Hiking the Liberal Arts. For the Gillens, this program was a passion project in the best possible way. Their attempt to recreate the famous Wordsworth Conference, run by Wordsworth descendants out of the former Wordsworth home at Dove Cottage, which the Gillens had found so delightful and career-shaping as graduate students in the 1970s. And I think it's really representative of their vision and the Washington College vision that they wanted to deliver that graduate student experience for our undergraduates. For many students, Kiplin Hall served as the apogee of their college career, and it was hearing the impassioned accounts of alumni that eventually persuaded me to take the baton after I was hired as Rich's replacement in 2017. And I just want to say that I'm quite happy I delivered that line accurately, because in the rehearsal I said hired as Rich's assistant in 2017. And that's not entirely untrue, but this is maybe more accurate for the history books. Because before I took that baton, I had some doubts. For one thing, I'd never heard of Kiplin Hall, and neither has anyone I've mentioned it to outside of Washington College circles. When I Googled the totemic phrase Kiplin Hall and pulled up a map near Scorton, Yorkshire, my first thought was, I didn't know that the Lake District was in Yorkshire. Hint, it's not. In fact, it's more like 2 hours of driving and many, many roundabouts away from key Lake District sites around Grasmere and Windermere. But a complex tangle of ongoing institutional affiliations, and might I add here, profoundly meaningful personal relationships, meant that WAC students had been staying for a pittance at the University of Maryland Study Center at Kiplin Hall, itself an odd and now, at least physically non-existent, architectural monument to a resolute crew of Maryland historians' interests in Kiplin Hall as a former resident of the Calvert family, who had helped to found the English colony of our home state. Part of my hesitation was, frankly, fear-based. Rich and Barbara were completely battle-hardened and relished telling horror stories of 20 years of travel. The walkie-talkie years, the many van accidents, the accidental prescription overdose, terrifying but without any lasting harm, I'm happy to announce. The students lost on top of a mountain as a storm settled in, but then found in a pub. Or, most notoriously, the time Barbara Gillen fell face first down part of the mountain, coming to just in time to bark orders to the mountain EMTs coming to her rescue. She was not going in that helicopter. Thank you very much. Carry me out. This anecdote offers only a mild sense of Barbara Gillen's personality. Her indomitable force of will was one part of it, But she also had the street smarts of a veteran third grade teacher and the organizational mind of a Napoleon. And for 20 years, she dedicated the full measure of her powers to the Kiplin Hall program. All the typical logistics, but also unforeseen tasks, like teaching students how to do laundry, how to cook for 20 people, or how to use a kettle. I've had the opportunity to participate in several readings and talks about Kiplin Hall alongside Rich Gillen. And after one, a woman from the audience approached me to ask, "Do you have a Barbara?" Alas, my answer was no. But what I can now tell you is that it has taken the labor of 4 adult professionals to replace one Barbara Gillen. And here I also do need to add that really relaunching this trip has been the work of an entire village, with not just my fearless co-leaders, Vicki Barnett Woods, Beth Choate, and Roy Kesey, who are all here tonight, but also my home department of the English department, the support of 3 English department chairs, Sean Meehan, Liz O'Connor, and Courtney Rydell, and the directors of all 3 signature centers at Washington College, Adam Goodhart at the Starr Center, Valerie Bruce at CES, and James Allen Hall here at the Rose O'Neill Literary House. A special debt of gratitude is due to Jay Griswold, Kiplin Hall's ongoing champion, and along with the Gillens, the 3rd visionary founder whose generosity and big ideas shine in the program you are about to hear more about. But in 2019, long before we had rallied all these troops for a full interdisciplinary relaunch, Barbara and Rich talked me out of my reservations and gave me the gift of 6 days in the Lake District and Yorkshire with them, my very own Kiplin Hall experience, embodied, earned by long hikes, and gladdened by hours of storytelling and the explication of Wordsworth. With their zest for narrative and their fusion of intellectual curiosity and brass tacks pragmatism, Rich and Barbara shared 20 years of institutional knowledge, the trailheads for epic hikes taken by William and Dorothy Wordsworth, the sheepfolds and ponds referenced in their poetry and journals, and invaluable tips about parking, bathrooms, and grocery shopping. Rich continues to serve as a kindly but unobtrusive mentor, and ended up coming out of retirement to teach a new crop of our first-year students about the transcendental delights of romantic poetry. And actually, I'm just gonna say, if you have had that special pleasure of taking an FYS with Professor Gillen, would you please raise your hand tonight? Okay, so the power rolls forward. But several of his FYS graduates have ended up coming on our trip with us. We're so fortunate that he is not only here tonight, but will be making a surprise contribution to our reading. Sadly, Barbara died 5 months after that last trip to the Lake District. It was a trip she'd made in the face of great physical limitations and pain, still committed to the idea that future generations of Washington College students should benefit from the knowledge and wisdom she'd helped to glean over 20 years of hard work, mishaps, and triumphs. She didn't fall down that mountain for nothing. And while we are still novices in all sorts of ways, making our beginners' mistakes and learning from them, we are also drawing on the legacy of what the Gillens started, re-narrating their lore and walking on trails, even stepping in the occasional river, paths that are not the same, but are richer in our understanding, at least, thanks to our knowledge of the many teachers, students, and poets who have walked ahead of us. And now let's hear from the students. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
All right, the 40 minutes of moments you've all been waiting for. Nora Siak is unfortunately unable to read this evening, so our first student reader, please help me welcome her to the lectern. Katie Hoffmaster is a history major and an art history and MFCE double minor in her sophomore year. She is a Maryland local from Baltimore County. Katie.
Hi, today I'll be reading 2 poems, the first of which was written at Greenhead Gill and is titled after the poem Michael by William Wordsworth. Besides the boisterous brook of Greenhead Gill, written May 22nd, 2025. Never have I felt closer to a land so far away, where dreary dampness for so long was reinforced in my mind. But here, beneath my palms, the grass is dry and crumbles as I grab hold. Each step we took was a beat echoing, as line after line was spoken aloud, rebirthed for our pleasure, and broken up by bleeding interjections. The rushing water becomes a still mirror, bouncing light in all directions, sending flames across my skin. Foxglove and wool mark the boundaries of the path we follow, grasping towards the abandoned rocks before us, forged by wanderers in tandem, by father and son, by brother and sister. Like the pairs before us, we too must leave the fold, but the memory remains, providing comfort where belonging has not yet been found. The second poem was written at Oristhead, May 23rd, 2025. Looking out, I am witness to the overlooked toil of plants, grasses reaching tall like trees, thick stalks creating windows over the horizon, and each gap its own scene, framed by columns that bend in the breeze. Cows bellow like horns, a far-off call. Footsteps snap against brush from behind, yet I fail to find an intruder. Only bundles of leaves hitting against one another under the force of the wind. Deeper through the woods, the trees take on a new life beneath the sun. Beams of light reflect off the trunks, revealing a metallic shine. When the woodsman meets the base with a swing of his axe, metal meets metal, and the sharp blade bounces off with a hollow sound. The polished steel that rips through the landscape provides no sap nor home. Above me, more hollow thuds and squawking cries fill the air. I sit back and watch the landscape twist, waiting for a reciprocal change to occur within me. Inspiration, understanding, revelation, and enjoying the work of a man with a glint in his eye who shaped the world in his view. Thank you.
I love that. And watch the landscape twist. That's really nice. Well done. Our second reader this evening, Ella Kozlowski, is a senior environmental science and English major who is so excited to share today. It's what it says in her bio, so it must be true. She is a CES fellow and a copy editor for The Elm. Ella.
Hello, everybody, and this is a section of a much longer journal entry that I was writing as we were kind of getting to our first place on the trip. Journal entry 1.75. I have been set to guard the bags in front of the hostel as the professors figure out room assignments and dinner is configured. This is currently the only way for me to feel helpful, so I am guarding these bags from such treacherous people as the Boy Scouts playing nearby. At my post, I have been joined by a wonderful Scottish terrier named Tilly, a little old lady dog who huffs at me when I stop scratching her under the chin, and whose owner is a slightly disgruntled Englishman in his 50s or 60s. He calls her occasionally between puffs of a cigarette and takes sips from his cup of wine. She hasn't budged yet, and somehow it feels like an honor. For the first time in what may well be 24 hours, I have been left alone, and the silence compared to that of airports and buses and even the car right here buzzes in my ears. I feel as if my ears are still reacting to the constant noise. It is a similar feeling to sea legs. This sort of constant inertia is the only reason I'm sitting on the stairs, because I am almost certain that if I stood still for too long without the thought of going miles upon miles until my next destination, I would fall over. So for now, I am content sitting on the stairs and watching the wind blow through the trees to soothe my ache to abide by the law of inertia. I shouldn't be complaining, as I suppose I'm the only one getting to feel this right now. Most of my class has gone inside to either set up their rooms or to help Nora and Sydney, a pair I truly do not envy, but respect wholeheartedly for their good nature about cooking first. They're still moving so fast and getting ready while I get to sit with Tilly and think about inertia. Maybe this is what the course is supposed to get at. Of course, it's all connected: the environment, history, literature, cause, effect, reaction. Not just that everything connects to everything else, but that everything runs into everything else. Something about the turning of the earth or the marching of time makes it so everything is like my classmates cooking dinner, just one thing right into the next. I really feel bad about letting them do all of it. I'll probably do the dishes to make up for it. I just caught myself yawning and Tilly huffed at me. I think to wake me up. Maybe she knows I will ruin my sleep schedule forever if I succumb to sleep now. Or maybe I just stop petting her again. Maybe I'm going insane because I just thought that a random dog read my mind. Either way, it helped, so I'll give her credit where it may or may not be due.
Just a quick note to students who are thinking about taking the trip next year. Ella really did do the dishes every night. And if you want everyone to love you, one of many ways. Our next reader this evening, Evelyn Luckadoo, is a senior majoring in English with minors in creative writing and in journalism, editing, and publishing. Originally from Westminster, Maryland, Evelyn received their associate's degree in English literature and creative writing from Carroll Community College before transferring to Washington College to finish their bachelor's. They are currently the editor-in-chief of Washington College's student newspaper, The Elm, and the social media manager for Writers Union. Evelyn.
Hello. I hope the microphone's in the right place. This was a journal entry that I wrote at the top of Greenhead Gill, the first day of the trip where they made us climb a mountain. It was really great. I sit on a knoll overlooking a lake. The water ripples with the wind, blue tinged green by the long grass that pokes through the shallow surface of the lake's edges, melting into the shore, harsh lines blurred by the greenery. The air is thin and cool and clean. I look up at the mountaintops across from me, rolling across the skyline, dotted with the occasional passing sheep as they graze. My legs are still burning from the journey up. I thought I'd been prepared for the long hike, despite the lingering jet lag. Proven wrong by the miles of steep incline, I find that I don't necessarily mind the exhaustion. Maybe the romantics were onto something. Everything here is green and vivid and quiet. I'm looking up again at the rocky slope, watching over the valley. It's strange to say, but for once I don't mind feeling so insignificant in comparison to the greater landscape. In preparation for this trip, we were asked to read William Wordsworth's Michael, a poem set in the valley of this mountain, spanning the life of a shepherd named Michael, his devoted wife Isabel, and their only son Luke, who was raised to take over the farm in the footsteps of his father. They live together by the brook of Greenhead Gill in the idyllic awe and peace that I've come to associate with such poetry. Michael and Luke spend their days tending the sheep that dot the hills, promising together to finish building the sheepfold that stood half finished in the valley. Of course, the poem doesn't end so easily. As it always does, life gets in the way. Sitting here in the landscape that inspired this poem, I can't stop thinking about the ending and how I must have misinterpreted those last few stanzas. My classmates have called the ending of the poem tragic. I can't wholly disagree. The ending in which Michael and his wife pass away in their old age as their beloved son loses himself to the allure of industrialization is meant to be tragic. Still, I think about the fallen farmhouse and unfinished sheepfold detailed within those final lines, and I can't force myself to approach it as melancholic. When I think of the sheepfold, I think of a farmhouse in Appomattox, thousands of miles from this hilltop. I think about how it sits, deteriorating and lonesome, while the land around it grows wild in between visits from my father and his lawnmower. I read about Michael and Isabel, alone in their Wilton cottage, and the comparison to my grandparents writes itself. This month marks a year since my grandfather passed. There was a strange guilt in getting on the plane to come here, or I guess the guilt lies in visiting a place he never had the chance to. My grandparents never had the means to travel like this. Like Michael, my grandfather's years were spent in the act of building a strong foundation for a simple life, one he'd hoped to pass down. Like Luke, my father moved away from home in the pursuit of building something he thought to be more. Maybe this isn't a fair comparison. I see how the line between tragedy and a bittersweet inevitability can blur. I run my fingers through the damp grass. I can't help but see myself as a guest in this place, pen scribbling in a composition book, desperate to keep the moment as a souvenir. I think that the ending of the poem is inevitable. I choose to see this inevitability as a comfort. Just as the oak tree stands firm in the final lines of the poem, outlasting the family and their cottage, the dogwood trees in my grandparents' yard are still standing, even as the pipes burst and the windows fog and crumble. I find comfort in the fact that the land will live on without us. This moment at the top of Greenhead Gill is borrowed. Maybe this is coping. Still, I think about that house and the growing weeds and the bodies that have since left it, and suddenly an appeal to nature doesn't sound so bad. Across the lake, an ewe and her lamb are grazing, making their way across the hillside. I wonder how long they've been here, and how many generations of bleating lambs have taken their first wobbly steps by the side of this lake, overlooking the winding trail and lush trees and people moving about in the town below. I'm glad to be allowed to share this with them. Thank you.
I think Evelyn's right. I think maybe the Romantics were onto something. One of the wonders of this trip is the degree to which they feel contemporary again. Not everything about them, but many things. Also, if you want a picture of Evelyn writing those exact words, that's on the front of the of your reading packets. Our next reader this evening, Liam Shaban Lucky, is an English and history double major. A junior from the Trenton, New Jersey area, his academic interest is in empire and race in 19th and 20th century literature. Liam.
Hi. Tonight I'll be reading two pieces. One is prose about the wonderful journal writer and poet Dorothy Wordsworth, and the other is a poem. And this is titled after a line from Dorothy's journal, very early in her Grasmere journal. In the last glimpse of twilight, it calls home the heart. Oh, I'm reading them in the opposite order that they're in the packet. At Wordsworth Grasmere, the heading comprising the museum and associated tea room, gift shop, and archive, together with Dove Cottage, where you can bump into William and Dorothy's original wooden tables and chairs, a woman is beginning to see the light of a modern age. The clunky title begs the question of when and how recently they removed a possessive S, Wordsworth's Grasmere, to admit in reality. There were two literary Wordsworths here, two pens, two hearts and heads, a sister without whom the brother would have no legacy to fill a museum. What a literary tome her journal would be in a man's hand, worth more than its glimpses into another's life and inspiration. I read for his and her mundanities, planting everything under the sun, doing the washing and taking naps, and then Dorothy crying by the lakeside or on the Coffin Road as townsmen sing old songs. Dorothy as personal secretary and housekeeper and journal of endless raw materials, Dorothy dredged and dug out, Wordsworth and Dorothy on the website, Dorothy's priceless records of a genius at work. Can one imagine Dorothy with a room of her own? Dorothy walks, makes her shoes, reads Shakespeare, a play a day in William's absence, has tea with the Simpsons, and the lake changes colors, moons rise spectacular, poor men and women of the Cumbrian valleys confide in her. Coleridge and John pass through, the very mountain's children are she and her reunited brothers, but the work is hers and the writing is William's, and, while crying at strangers' sunny day funerals, doesn't a name of her own pass her by? Across the country, I wonder at sibling writers. Why the Parsonage Museum and pop culture at large pit the Brontes against each other, while I do the same to the deeply loving and collaborative Wordsworths. It's all about recognition. Anne's lack of an exhaustingly verbose Jane Eyre blockbuster, Branwell's lack of a novel, Dorothy's unrealized prosaic strength. But see their specters today walking these landscapes, pouring out their passions together. Exhausting, we'll find it one day and lay it all down. Wildfell Hall over Villette, Dorothy, as stocked pond and sister housewife typist. Does Anne have a rose named after her at the site of Emily's petals on her Scarborough grave? Thank you. And this is called Watching the English, and I titled it after a book that we had to read a chapter of that was in our reading packet for the trip. Walking England's past of a May week, I met with a wasteland, a nation's shores and borders sustained by eating of its own temporal meat. The Celts were not there at Scarborough Castle and the refuse of Cromwell's war. The Nanticoke, Choptank, Saponi Tutelo, Mattapeak, Piscataway, Lenape, Susquehannock, Tuscarora, and Massawamek haunt only scant blurbs in 12 Point at the Calvert's Kiplin Hall. Still here to prosper from the century's bloodletting, the English walk around without sight of the wooden black boys holding up side tables under the Italian dressers. Their belief in a history legendarized is so strong there is no Britain beyond it. There is no English slave trade, no Irish plantations, no opium wars, no British Raj in England. The immigrants, the wealth, they seem to just come to them. Perhaps because the people are so friendly. They enjoy food from all over the world. Aren't they diverse? They know their monarchs down from Egbert the Saxon. They pride in their Roman ties, and in country lanes where lists of World War dead are weeping axes, they've wiped their hands of their unsetting sun and the 15 currencies bearing their queen's bust. What could this local salt of the earth have to do with global concerns? Countries they can't even name. One could find even a year spent on authors' homes and moorland hikes lacking, but 10 days is quite enough of mummies' hands in small-town museums, guides making light of child labor, and nervous, grudging answers from country house volunteers. 10 days and I'm done with meeting the Richard Dalloways and Hugh Whitbreads of the North. I've seen them. The empire's gone and they're still here, digging their comforts out of the Mother Queen's breast and, like good children, blinding themselves in witness of the price the world pays that she may feed them. Thank you.
Dorothy Wordsworth as a stocked pond is a really powerful image. Thank you. That was terrific. Our next reader this evening, Juliana Nelson Gaudet, is a second-year English and French double major, hoping to pursue a career in journalism, editing, and publishing, or translation. Julie.
Hello, I am going to read my presentation from the 18th Century Conference that was held here at the college last month, which is a summation of the research paper I submitted after the trip on the Merlin chair. Merlin's reclining chairs were used by people with gout to manually propel themselves from room to room. The board at the base of the chair flips down as a footrest. The levers on both armrests are connected to the wheels by metal rods which propel the user forward as the levers are pushed clockwise. Gout is an inflammatory disease caused by a collection of uric acid in joints, specifically in the toes, which makes walking very painful and difficult. It is a genetic disease, but is also linked to diets of red meat and alcohol, which is why it is often referred to as the disease of kings. Created by John Joseph Merlin around the beginning of the 19th century, gout chairs are the earliest examples of self-propelled wheelchairs. Merlin was a craftsman and inventor. Aside from the chair, he is credited for his invention of several mechanical clocks, prosthetics, and even a pedal-operated revolving tea table. The chairs were used in homes like Kiplin Hall from the 1700s to the 1900s, but no one knows which of the Kiplin residents used the chair I am currently observing. The hall was requisitioned and turned into army units and housing for RAF soldiers in 1942, so World War II soldiers are among the possible patients in need of such a chair. Gout chairs were commissioned from the craftsmen making them. Merlin is known to have sold a chair to the Duke of Northumberland for £42 sterling in 1795, which would be a little over $8,000 in 2025. Merlin's designs were manufactured by cabinet makers like Gillow & Co. and were sold throughout Europe by the 18th century. The chair I observed had a lot of wear on it, suggesting persistent use, possibly by more than one person. Upon coming into contact with the chair, I began to notice that my notions of gout were shrouded by the misinformation that still surrounds the disease centuries later. I wanted to know more about what exactly gout is, about its causes, and about attitudes around disease and disability during the 18th and 19th centuries. The volunteer stationed in the library was happy to talk about it with me and to answer my questions as they came. She advised that I look further into the history of the house and offered to bring the binder of information the volunteers kept and referenced. Inside, there was only one piece of information on the chair, the cover page of an article written for the Victoria and Albert Museum in London circa 1999. The language used on the cover was striking. Just sit back and enjoy yourself seemed like an odd way to advertise an assistive device for people dealing with great chronic pain. This moment discussing language with the volunteer was what garnered my interest into looking at gout through an interdisciplinary lens. What language was used when discussing disease and disability back then, and does it connect how gout to how gout has been portrayed throughout history, even in art? During my research after the trip, those questions led me to a painting of a rich man with gout. He was surrounded by waitstaff who served him food, poured wine, and bandaged his propped feet. The work, titled Comfort in the Gout, seemed particularly tone-deaf. The idea of encountering a sickly man and choosing to aestheticize his pain only because he was affluent enough to be surrounded by staff and expensive furnishings intrigued me because of how it fueled the disease of King's fire. I also found a journal entry from Dorothy Wordsworth's Grasmere journals, where she describes meeting a man who was looking for leeches on Greenhead Gill. Leeches were a common cure for all types of illnesses, gout included. Although it is not certain that he had gout or was sourcing the leeches to cure someone with gout, she writes of how difficult the task of finding them had become because he himself was very ill. The Wordsworths were there for leisure while he was risking his health further to sustain his own livelihood. The gravity of that interaction provoked my questions about attitudes of wealth and disability, whether short-term or prolonged. My aforementioned interaction with the volunteer also highlighted the importance of people within a place. The volunteer group at Kiplin Hall is one of the first things I think of when I reflect on our time in England. Their kindness and compassion fueled my desire for knowledge and conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. This piece was the result of an exercise during the Kiplin Hall trip at Kiplin Hall, where everyone went around looking for an object they connected to. And this was one of the great objects. The only thing that would have been better is if they'd had a pedal-operated revolving tea table. And I don't drink tea, but I kind of want this table. Thank you, Julie. Our next reader this evening, Carlos Pavasils, is a senior English major and theater minor from Charlottesville, Virginia. While far from his first time abroad, the Kiplin Hall trip was his first time visiting England. Carlos.
All right, so this piece was written on our hike from Whitby Abbey. Is that the name? Yeah, Whitby Abbey to Robin Hood Bay. And this was one of many many heavily fictionalized accounts of our locations. Just as a content warning, there is swearing in this piece, so if that's a problem, I guess cover your ears until it's over. It's not a long piece. So, yeah. Sam knew he had 2 miles left to the rescue point. He hoisted his rope with ease and started off. Rescue workers are afforded a break on the trail, and he had just exhausted his. Well, technically it was a break. But it was really a time to mull over the anxiety of his first hillside cliff rescue and slap every little insect that bugged him. Like that. Now that he was on the move again, those damn pests cleared out of his way. After a half mile of adrenaline rushing him, he finally slowed down. If that fucking idiot who decided to walk too close to the edge was going to be rescued, Sam would need to be in good shape to pull it off. With his pace slowed, Sam realized just how different the trail looked in motion compared to when he had been sitting still. The impressive jagged cliffs he'd walked by looked much less intimidating when they were shrunk in the distance. The pasture to his left appeared more vast and made him feel more isolated. The trail in front of him had hypnotic cracks that he purposefully avoided stepping on. They were a bit too hypnotic. Sam upped his hustle. A man needed him. And I'll let all of you decide which parts of that story were fictional and which ones were real.
Thank you, Carlos. Yeah, I was going to actually say something about that, but I guess I shouldn't ruin the surprise. Our next... Okay. No, I was just going to say I recognize the insects from the hike along the dinosaur coast that I made everyone sit still in the middle of. And I recognize the exercise of perceptions at different speeds that we did toward the end of the trip. And I'm glad to see those two things synthesized. Our next reader, Sydney Walker, is a senior studying human development and minoring in museum, field, and community education and Chesapeake Regional Studies. She is originally from Williamsburg, Virginia, but currently lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. Sydney.
Sorry. There you go. Oh. Hi. So I will be reading you a poem. I really generally in my life like to consider myself a very positive, upbeat person, but these are things I noticed while hiking as a slightly judgy observer. A man drinking milk, a lot of it. Smoke rising from something out in the distance, but not an angry black smoke. It's billowing in white. A graceful black bird, maybe some kind of crow, sailing in the wind. A sailboat, also sailing in the wind. Shocking. Two women who accidentally ended up on this path, the very same one we flew from across an ocean to hike. The wind is hitting my good side. I feel very majestic, but everyone else is too far away for me to tell them. Those raspberries I got from Tesco earlier are so fresh and not too sweet. A rock with smaller rocks under it. The way that people are so unnatural when they pose in front of Lake Windermere and this mountain, both very natural things. The blackbird I was watching earlier is back. Even though it looks like all the others, I'm sure it's my old subject. The way I've accidentally turned 90 degrees from my original sitting spot. I feel like I've been sitting for so long that people and animals can no longer see me. A bird almost walked into my shoe. A person almost stepped on my foot. My little bird friends have silver masks. Their heads bob back and forth when they walk. Those raspberries I got from Tesco earlier are so fresh. More people have come to our spot now, dogs too. Notable names include Goddess, Dumbledore, Izzy, or maybe Lizzie, and Gracie. Some people seem to stay here for a while others pass through just as quickly as they arrive. I'm starting to have a hard time daydreaming with all these people around. And Tesco raspberries taste best when you share them. Thank you.
She's not kidding about the raspberries. Our next reader, Kai Follett, is an English major with a minor in secondary education. She's from Media, Pennsylvania. Kai.
Good evening. This poem was composed as a reflection of the moors. This place, at the top of the world, wind whipping as if you're flying, almost needing a tether to keep you grounded. The wind is never dying, at the top of the world. Here, at the top of the world, the clouds move fast, a gray coating over the sky, one never-ending mass, at the top of the world. Tucked below the top of the world, the small town of Haworth stands, filled with small shops and teacups, the bricks of the streets and buildings all placed by hands, safe from the winds, at the top of the world. Thank you.
One of the things that you haven't seen this evening is all the work that went into the work. It was good when it started, but it is what you're hearing because they wrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it. And we started in some pretty great places, but work of this level doesn't happen without rewriting. Kai is our last student reader of the evening. Could we get one last round of applause for everybody? Yeah, that was terrific. Well done. Next up, we have Dr. Vicki Barnett Woods with some of the other highlights that may or may not have shown up in the slideshow. Vicki, thank you.
Sorry, small miscommunication. That never happened at Kiplin Hall. We have one more reader tonight. We're very delighted to have Dr. Rich Gillen sharing his poetry for the first time. So, Rich, would you please come to the microphone?
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Charles, for a wonderful commentary as an introduction, truly. And I've been in this room since its inception and have listened to a lot of student readings. And believe me, you have a huge amount of talent here tonight. I'm really impressed. I'm not just saying that to be nice. Really not. I was talking with Professor Charles recently, and she asked me if I was writing anything, and I blurted out that, yeah, I was writing poetry. And she said, would you share one? And I intended the things that I've been writing basically for my family, but I thought, okay, at the urgings of my daughters, they said, oh, go public. So this is my approach. Well, you know, in life, things in time wear down, and things get forgotten, people get forgotten. And after Professor Charles' introduction tonight, I don't think it's going to be a case about Barbara. But my point tonight was to indeed just remember her. So this is called Recollecting Barbara. The timid November sunlight yields to a sepia withdrawal of the day. Where the road descends into a woods, I feel you. The scene is familiar, a place where we walked and talked, and now is still in anticipation of the coming evening. The absence of your warm hands and wry smile disturbs the silence as I reflect and look for you. Moss-flecked trees almost orderly in a row, their tops straining to touch across the road, sentinels to the passage of time, rigid against the rising chill, the moment haunted by emptiness. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to talk a little bit about the highlights of the 2025 trip. So it's not that bad, guys. So the 2025 trip, built on the exploratory trip of the preceding year, was a beautiful experiment of kindness, curiosity, and endurance. We traversed terrains that we knew would be grueling, but I think that we as a staff were so impressed with how nearly every single member of our student group was met with some emotional or physical challenge and overcame it, much as we overcame those rocky edges of Greenhead Gill. One of the highlights that students had the opportunity to encounter was with the sublime. The concept proposed by the problematic social philosopher Edmund Burke, that we, the human animal, can experience the sensation of complete awe and wonder when faced with the vastness and seeming incomprehensibility of the natural world. Accompanying that sense of awe is also the sense of mortality, the fact that you know that when faced with this great mountain or the never-ending ocean or the undefined depths of seaside cliffs, you could die. And that mountain, the sea, or the cliffs will go on as they have done since the beginning of time. So as a total non sequitur, we also cooked our own food, as indicated by, as mentioned by Ella. And so to keep things relatively cost effective for this trip, we asked that students in pre-assigned pairs, who was the first pair of Nora and Sydney, well done, kudos to you guys, cook dinner for the rest of the group on a given night of the trip. So though it is usually one pair that is officially assigned the task of cooking, more often than not, many more students jumped in, lending support, taking up each other's space, or critiquing each other's use of butter, tools, cooking methods, etc. These dinners were a highlight of the trip, for as the grudging, tired, and somewhat smelly collective clusters together to make a meal, we did it as a family. What started out as a group of acquaintances builds into a cohesive cohort, a kinship of sorts. So the program is not all sublime and eating food. There are also intellectual challenges that we inspire in our students. There are two major assignments of the course, a final research paper at the end and an object analysis paper whilst at Kiplin Hall. Jules's paper reflected what that assignment kind of looks like. In this latter assignment, students take on the role of a museum curator, assessing one object that is housed in the Kiplin Hall Historic Home. Students found themselves drawn to a variety of different objects, and I'm sure they'll be able to share with you what those objects were in the conversations to follow after this session. And the descriptions were of these objects were fitting of the best museum specialists that this world has to offer. They were great. I want to acknowledge everyone who went on this trip because you have contributed to this program in ways that reach beyond our time together in June and in this evening and after you leave Washington College. So thanks to Nora, Vic, Emma out there who's graduated, Katie, Liam, Carlos, Sarah, Kai, Evelyn, Jules, Ella, and Sydney. If you, the audience, have not joined us on this journey, then we invite you to apply. Our locations for the 2026 trip are going to be amazing. And I know this because they are nearly identical to the 2025 trip. So some of these sites include the rolling green hills and the cerulean blue lakes of Wordsworth Lake District, something that has been the highlight of the conversation this evening, the haunting ruins of Whitby Abbey, and of course, the namesake of our trip, Kiplin Hall. To speak more of the logistics of the trip, including upcoming info sessions, I turn the mic over to Deputy Director of the Center for Environment and Society, Dr. Beth Choate.
Thank you so much, Vicki. And thank you to all the students that read. That was absolutely fabulous. And it was so fun to reminisce on the journey. So if the readings and the images and all of these pieces have come together to make you want to join these fabulous co-leaders in the 2026 trip, to consider the interactions between literature, history, and the environment, and cook together, then here's what you need to know. So we are going to have 2 info sessions, one before the holiday break or the winter break and one after. The first info session will be December 4th at 5 o'clock. You will get email and more information about this, but I just want it to be on your radar. That's not that long from now. You got a Thanksgiving break, but then when you come back. The second will be post-break on January 22nd, also at 5, both of those in the egg. So just keep an eye out for announcements and emails. We're asking that applications are going to be due on January 30th, and we're going to ask you to reflect a little bit in those. So start thinking about
interdisciplinary, how such a trip will impact you personally and professionally, and how you might bring these many disciplines together with your own interests. The trip is being held, just so you know, and you can have it on your radar, May 19th through 30th, so after graduation, before June begins. We do that on purpose so you can get back for internships. And if you apply to the program and you are accepted to the program, you will be enrolled in English 385, Literature and Landscapes, and you will get credit for that course. The fee for the trip is approximately $4,500 with potential assistance through the Barbara Gillen Scholarship. And so I encourage you all to, if you're interested in any way, to please come to the info session or reach out to one of us, and we will answer any and all questions that you may have. We want folks from all disciplines. We want everyone, wherever you are in your journey of understanding these things. I came to the table as a environmental scientist. I took Rich's class. Now I love poetry. And so, you know, we all bring something new and unique to the table. So please join us.
Okay, well, I'm not going to try to match Roy Kesey's trademark witticisms right now. So I think what I'll just do is move us forward into the Q&A. And ideally, maybe if there are any questions for our student readers, that might be a great place to start. Leah? Yep. Leah? Whoa. Oh, wait. Okay, so the question was, who's your favorite romantic poet? Followed by a long, ooh. First answer shouted out I heard was Keats, and then I heard Dorothy, and I will fill in Wordsworth for those of you who aren't sure. Any other votes for Dorothy? 5 hands for Dorothy. What about William? 1, 2, 1.5, 3. Okay. The Brontes aren't quite romantics, but if anyone wants to give a shout out for any of the Brontes. Okay, well, we have a lot of favorites, folks. Thank you. Leo, do you have a favorite? Okay. All right. Okay. Any other questions from the audience? Are there any graduates any alumni from the Kiplin Hall program under Rich and Barbara who are here with us? I think we might have a few on the live stream. Thank you for being here in one way or another. Yes, in the back of the room? Oh. It's true. Logan's a graduate of the 2024 fact-finding mission, so thank you for your hard work. But I think Logan, question? Okay, I'm going to repeat that for folks who can't hear, which is, what is something unexpected from the trip that people found? And maybe, there's thoughtful faces. Could one thoughtful face, Carlos, could you come give your answer from the microphone? And if there's going to be a second person, think about that. Come join us.
Something unexpected. I lost my answer. Now that's unexpected. Going up to the mic and forgetting your answer. Oh yeah, that was unexpected because I lost my phone on a train to the factory. Yeah.
But is that the most unexpected thing about that?
Well, the unexpected thing was it was found rather fast. Well, not by us, but by the staff.
someone returned it to the lost and found on the train system. And just so you know, always bother to ask in situations like that, and also return phones.
Yeah. And it was nerve-wracking because I couldn't freeze my credit card without my phone.
Dual authentication. So we've got Kai and then Evelyn.
One student on the trip forgot to pack an essential. I'm not going to say their name, but we spent forever looking for underwear everywhere, and you have to say knickers. That was a rough part of the trip. That was very unexpected because there was a lot of luggage.
So the most unexpected part of the trip for me was the cab ride to the museum in Manchester. It was actually my first time in the cab, and I made the mistake of saying that out loud quietly. And so Dr. Charles turned to the cab driver and said, "This is her first time in a cab." But it sparked a really nice conversation. We got to talking with this gentleman, and he told us all about his life, his wife, who's an artist in New York, who now has a gallery, his daughter, who ceramics artist, and then his son, who is a doctor. And then he asked if any of us were looking for husbands. But it was just a really, really nice conversation that I was not expecting to have, and one that I probably would not have sparked on my own. So thank you for that, Dr. Charles.
Next piece of learning: talk to strangers. There's a question from the back. I think, is it Liv? Or is that Willow? I can't see who that is. Okay, yeah. Sarah, and maybe two people here. If anyone who didn't speak is willing to share, I would love to hear some of their answers. But Sarah's hand went right up, so.
I did not read, but I swear I went on the trip. One of my favorite moments was sort of an impromptu thing, which could fit the last question as well. There was a group, we were sitting over in the moors after we went to the Bronte parsonage, and we were like, we could go back into town, or we could go hike to this mysterious tree about 3 miles that way. So there was a group of about 6 of us that went with Keezy, and we trekked through the very windy moors and rather hilly. And it actually ended up being like one of my favorite moments of the trip was that trek. And I'm gonna swear here, but Roy Keezy told us we're gonna touch that fucking tree. I failed to mention that the tree is in the location Hilltop, which inspired the novel Wuthering Heights, which I suppose was important context for this story. But that actually ended up being one of my favorite parts was that trek there. We disregarded any sort of path. We kind of just walked right through the brambles up to that fucking tree. So yeah.
Okay, I think Vic, I saw your hand go up, so that means I'm calling on you.
Okay. So I will say the most memorable moment was it 7 miles? Was that the 7 mile walk? Okay. I've never hiked before going on this trip, and I underestimated myself because I died. I feel like I died after every one. I did. I died. I'm telling you. And we just kept walking and walking. And I was like, I think I see the end. And it was like, no, it's not. And then we got to the end. We went to a pub, and I got to eat. And I will say that was the best thing to happen was to eat. Because the bugs were so bad. They were so bad. They would like stick to your face, and you would think you grabbed them, and it's not. And it was just all over my face. It was great. So, yeah, I will say. And then the hikes. Yeah. Yeah.
I think, Carlos, did you remember? Or you have a question?
No, I was going to talk about the favorite.
Oh, sure.
So my favorite part of the trip was inevitably going to be something to do with writing. I am a writer. So that thing, it sounds bad at first, but I got to cosplay as a tortured artist twice. The first was with the work I read here, because as Dr. Kesey mentioned, it was actually raining, and there were bugs when we stopped on that hike. And that influenced my writing. I kind of felt like Edgar Allan Poe in the moment. And the other time was in the moors, because, as was said earlier, very windy, kind of hurt my ears. But it did make me think about what I was writing, because I was thinking about like the Brontes, and how two of the sisters had works that had at least one scene in the moors. And I thought, what if I wrote a romance, a brief romance, in this super windy environment, so chaotic? And I think what I got was pretty interesting. I didn't have enough time to share it, but yeah, that was my favorite part.
Okay, so two more. Yeah, okay, Julie and Siobhan.
My favorite part was somehow finding a way to stick up the middle finger in all of the pictures that Vicky took.
My favorite, just like, I feel like it can't be said enough what Sarah said, that hike was so amazing. All thanks to Kesey for like encouraging us to go all the way up there. Because we were standing so far away from this tree. We were standing on this hilltop. We could see it way off. Like, I never would have thought I could actually look at that and then walk all the way there. And that really made me feel like so accomplished. But then also my most surprising moment might have been how my feet felt walking back. It was awful. It was terrible, but it was all worth it. And also getting to talk about Empire with Vicky. We had so many great conversations, and with everybody, but especially with Vicky, it was really great.
Thank you. I think maybe this is the note that we'll end on, but just end in a way that invites everyone to continue these conversations, because we have here, I think, 12 graduates of this year's program, a few people from the 2024 trip, one of our founders, four co-leaders. There are a lot of people here who would love to talk to you about the Kiplin Hall program if you're interested. So please come seek somebody out. It's been a really special set of experiences, as I think we've all been able to hear today. And what really inspires me as a teacher is that the learning process is only kind of picking up speed and momentum, even as we travel home with these kind of with these richer memories. So thank you so much for coming tonight, and please eat food and come talk to us about the program. So.